right, welcome everybody. Welcome to this beautiful room, the Veterans Room here at the Armory, Park Avenue Armory. And this is, I think, the 4th or 5th year that we've had an ICOM CC TAFAF collaboration. And as has already been mentioned, ICOM CC is the International Council of Museums Conservation Committee. And ICOM CC is a global organization. It's made up of about 5,000 members from all over the world. And there are 21 working groups within that committee, each of which concentrates on a specific specialty within the field of conservation. And so it's really fantastic that we're here with this special collaboration between a fine art fair and a global conservation organization, because at the core, we're both focused on very common interests, which is the museum conservation, preservation of cultural heritage. So today, in our conversation on conservation, we aim to shed light on the collaborative efforts of conservators and philanthropists in preserving cultural treasures. And our focus today is a medieval manuscript on colored parchment that's known as the Black Book of Hours. And it's one of the most significant holdings in the collection of the Hispanic Society Museum and Library here in New York City. And for the conservation treatment of this extraordinary manuscript at the Hispanic Society, they are a recipient of TAFAF's Museum Restoration Fund, which is granted by TAFAF and their lead partner, Bank of America. And that annual grant supports the vital work of the international art community in preserving artistic and cultural heritage. And as has already been mentioned, the Book of Hours is just right across in the hallway, which is terrific. So after you hear about it today, you'll be able to look at it directly. And before we continue, I, as a ICOM CC representative today, I want to mention the Stichting ICOM CC Fund. And the TAFAF Museum Restoration Fund has kindly given a grant to this fund, which is an independent organization that helps ICOM CC with the activities and projects and things that are earmarked to help cover the registration fees for the 21 coordinators of those working groups I mentioned. These are people who volunteer their time to organize all of the programming, academic papers, field trips, and so on. It's a lot of work, and it's volunteer. So this fund is primarily to raise money to support those members. So if anyone is interested in contributing, there's a QR code. Tell people about it, and thank you for listening to that. So we'll continue now, and I'll start with introductions. And first I have Guillaume Kientz. Did I say it right?
That's perfect.
Okay. He's the director and CEO of the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. And next we have Monica Katz, who is Conservator Emerita from the Hispanic Society, and James Blanco, who is the Senior Managing Director of Financial Services at Guggenheim Partners, and he's a board member of the Hispanic Society. So thank you all for being here. And I will begin by turning the floor to Guillaume, who will get us started by telling you all about the Hispanic Society and giving us an introduction to this fascinating object, the Black Book of Hours. So I'll just pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And first of all, I want to thank TAFAF for this opportunity, and of course, TAFAF Restoration Fund and Bank of America for their generous support, so that we can now take very good care of one of the gems of our collection, our library, at the Hispanic Society. Secondly, I just want to say a few words, pay respect to the individual behind the existence of the Hispanic Society Museum Library. You have him on the screen here. His name was Archer Milton Huntington. He was the son to Collis Huntington and Arabella Duval. And books were really his first passion. He was born in 1870 in New York City, and at the age of 12, he went with his parents on a trip to London, where he bought a book, The Zincali by George Borrow. It's about it's a novel about the Roma community in Spain, and somehow that triggered his passion for Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, and the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking world, but also his passion for books. And he became an amazing bibliophile, also quite an erudite, and a writer himself. So really, he engaged with all aspects of what a book can provide in terms of collecting, studying, writing, and so on. At the age of 19 years old, he is in Mexico with his parents, and he decides to create an institution here in New York City to preserve, promote, and celebrate the many cultures that speak or spoke Spanish or Portuguese. And by 1890, he already had collected 2,000 books. He started to travel extensively on the Iberian Peninsula in the 1890s, and he bought the Black Book of Hours in Madrid for £45. Don't ask me what it represents. I don't know, but that's where he bought that book to enrich his library. During those trips, he also met with a very important Spanish bibliophile, the Marqués de Jerez de los Caballeros, who was the most important book collector in Spain. And the Marqués was really concerned about keeping his library together, making sure that his legacy will continue. And as it happens, Archer Huntington was the only one who could actually, honor that dream and make the commitment that he would keep the library together. And in 1902, he bought the library from the Marqués and had it sent to New York. And I just want to, if we can go here, you have a portrait of the Marqués by Joaquin Sorolla, another passion of Archer Huntington, and the library of Archer Huntington in Plaisance, who was his country house in the Bronx in Westchester. It's now Preston High School. If you want to see the building, it still exists. And this library is very much the core of the collection of the Hispanic Society. The Hispanic Society, in many ways, is an exceptional institution with an exceptional collection with Goya, El Greco, Zurbarán, Murillo, all of them, we have them and many of them. But really what makes it unique, it is its library. It's really its library that makes it like not only a gem, but a gem to the entire world. And so we're very honored and humbled to be entrusted with the stewardship of this collection. And I don't know if we want to pass to
next slide.
Yeah, I just wanted to show the last exhibition that we organized about the treasures from the library, and I have the catalog here for those of you who would like to have a deeper look into it. It was created by my predecessor, Mitch Carding, and John O'Neill, the curator of rare books and manuscripts at the Hispanic Society. It was in 2021 at the Gwalior Club, and he showed really some of our most important books and manuscripts, including, of course, the Black Book of Hours. And I wanted to show you these images because one of the challenges about taking care of a rare book and manuscript library is that those materials, as you well know, are light sensitive, so they cannot be on permanent display. And so that presents a challenge when it comes to raise awareness about their importance, their fragility, and their access. So aspects that we will be discussing throughout this panel discussion. But I will let James Blanco, one of our trustees and incredible bibliophile, to say more about the Black Book of Hours as an object, perhaps.
Well, it's good to meet all of you. And I, too, echo Guillaume's thanks for both TFAF and the Bank of America for everything you've done. I'm a proud member of the Gwalior Club, and I'm a trustee of the Hispanic Society, so I'm very happy to be involved in two leading organizations that support the cause of books. So what is a book of hours? What is a Black Book of Hours, and why is it important? A black book of hours is formally a visually striking devotional book commissioned by nobility. Our book, it was commissioned in 1458, and it's one of 7 known black books that survive today. It's in a box outside of the door. Please see it on your way out. Black books of ours were made, this is prior to Gutenberg and prior to the printing press, and so you would take vellum, which is really calfskin, and you would turn it black through a treatment of iron and copper. And so not surprisingly, taking calfskin and treating it with iron and copper, 600 years later, not many of them survive. And so our book, and Monica and Guillaume will tell you about, survived largely because of the very strict standards around exhibition and conservation that the Hispanic Society has. A black book of ours is, functionally a devotional book. And so, it's at once a work of art. They would take these black pages of vellum and they would illustrate it with gold and silver. And so it's a beautiful work of art. From an anthropological perspective, black books of ours tended to be individualized. So within the book, there would be various prayers, usually penitential psalms, and then other prayers that would be said at different hours of the day. And so you could see a little bit about how the nobility might have lived and what they did during the day as regard to prayer by studying the book. And from a bibliographical perspective, you can study the book as a physical object and compare it to other books of the period. You can see how this technology moved across Europe. The place in Europe where they were best known and best able to make these books were in Bruges at the time. And that's where we believe our book came from. And I shared the story with you because it's not obvious with only 7 of these surviving objects why black books are important, both as an anthropological artifact, as a bibliographical artifact, and as a devotional artifact. But this story is important to the conservation effort. It's important to get people to understand why these books are important and how, if you look at them from different angles, you can learn about what life was like in the 15th century, and why it's important to support conservation efforts. And with that, I probably want to introduce our conservation expert.
Oh, but I have a question first, before we go on to Monica, which is, you've made this beautiful slide that shows the other examples of the black books. But for those who can't read that tiny print, can you tell us where these are all located in the world right now?
Maybe I'll take that.
Sure.
Any one of you, yes.
So this slide goes in chronological order. You've got the Hispanic Society one, which is the earliest, as the first. Then you've got the Black Book of Hours, which is only a page of it in the Louvre, which is underneath. Then you've got the one at the Banque Nationale de Paris. Sorry, the BNF is the library in the National Library of France, which is the one from 1470. There are a grouping from 1470. The Galeazzo Sforza one is the one in Austria at the Austrian National Library. Underneath, above, you've got the page from the Vatican Library, the bifolio there. Sorry, the Vatican Library. Then you have circa 1480, and this is very important, the one from the Morgan Library, which is in New York, and the one that is most similar to ours under certain aspects. And finally, and this is a bit of an outlier, but we always include it, is the Bastance. It's the only one that isn't a liturgical work, but it does have completely black pages, and the writing is in gold and silver, as are in all the others. So they are so there are 2 in the States, and all the others are in Europe. And most of them have extremely long provenances in the locations where they're currently found.
And the 2 that are in New York are fully bound volumes, correct?
Actually, the Morgan one was disbound, I think, in the 70s, and it's disbound and occasionally, but not for ages, and it hasn't been on exhibit for ages. Okay. Ours is bound. I do believe the Morgan one was bound by the same binder as ours in the 19th century.
Okay.
Originally.
And this is something that Monica is going to talk about for anyone who isn't familiar with these kinds of rare books, that they're often rebound in their lifetimes. And this is one of the issues, is that you have very non-contemporary bindings that keep them together, but maybe cause issues with their conservation. And that's something that leads us to the actual conservation project, right?
And just to add to my colleagues here, thank you so much, TFAF and Bank of America, for this money. I have been trying to get this project done since about 2018. It was the subject of every year. We used to choose an object from the collection that would be the theme for the gala of that year, of Hispanic Society's, in the old days, the major fundraising event. They chose the Black Book of Hours that year, and we had, very unusually for us, a flyer in the back asking for funds, and we managed to get a very small amount there, but not enough to do it properly. And the problem is, can we just go on a slide? So this is the book. It's tiny. You'll see it outside. This is actually the page that's exhibited, that is actually open at the moment. And this is the one that's been published. This is the image that's been published. It's the one that we always see. It comes just after the calendars, so it's the first important page in the book. But it does mask some of the other interesting issues, which are it is not finished. So although the text has been completely done, you have got gaps in the decoration, and that may have been one of the reasons why, one of the reasons for this is that we believe that it was commissioned by Marie of Castile after her husband died in 1458. She died 3 months later. So there was a very short period of time where she was doing this. She had given the commission. It's got, as you saw in the first image, it's got her coat of arms at the bottom of the page, but there's a lot that's missing. And we don't know whether she ever received it, whether she ever got to even leaf through the pages. We don't know whether, in fact, anyone has read it, except for the fact that there is a note at the very back, which gives its provenance. It says that it was the notice from 1656. It's written in a 17th century hand, so we figure we're safe on that. It belonged to Marie of Castile, and it was given, sorry, I need glasses to read. It was given by the Bishop of Osma, Palafox y Mendez, to the Archbishop of Toledo as a thing of inestimable value. And in fact, when I read that, I'm sorry to go off on a bit of a tangent, but when I read that, I went on this wild goose chase to look to see if I could find how much a Book of Hours would have cost in the 15th century. And we don't know that about ours, but helpfully, the one that belonged to Charles the Bold, we know it cost 420 Parisian livres, which was equivalent, each livre was equivalent to 3.57 ounces of silver, which at yesterday's price at lunchtime, which was $32.07 an ounce, came to a grand total of $50,000. So it was always a really high value, expensive object.
What's also interesting, sorry if I interrupt, in a technical perspective, is that since we assume that it was commissioned by Marie de Castile upon the death of her husband in June 1458, and then left unfinished after she died in September 1458, we know how much one can do in like 3 to 4 months. And so I think that's very interesting, because one of the questions that we get a lot is, how long did it take to create like a tapestry or to create a Black Book of Hours and something like that? So that's one clue in
Our next project will be to figure out the purchasing power parity of $50,000 back to 14.
Right, right. Maybe somebody in the audience can calculate that while we're talking.
And it looks
someone has the
pristine.
answer.
It looks pristine, actually. And so a lot of the questions I had to answer at the beginning was like, what do you need to do? Why are you actually even messing with this? Leave it as it is. But, next slide, I hope.
Oops, I'm pushing the wrong button. There you go.
Right. So The problem with the 19th century binding is that it's extremely tight. So the first image is what the book looks like after it's been exhibited for a couple of months, which in this case I think was in Mexico. And you can't close it. And we were very concerned that the continual opening and closing would cause damage, unseen damage, in the gutter. And the complicating factor is that we don't know how this particular black book of ours, how the pages have been pigmented. So we can't anticipate how this action is going to create problems. So the first thing that we needed to do, that we had been discussing since 2017, 2018, when I first had to handle the book, was taking it out of this binding and finding another way to house it. And when you do something like that, which is quite dramatic as a conservator, to take it out of its binding, the concern, you want to take the most advantage of the opportunity that's given you. A lot of our problems with this book is it's the book that's most requested, one of the ones that's most requested in the library, both from the perspective of researchers who want to look at it and also as an object in other institutions. And so we wanted to find a way that didn't put pressure on it, limited the number of handlings. So if someone wants to look at it, they can see good high-resolution digital imagery, but that's extremely expensive. And that's one of the things that the TFEF grant is going to allow us to do, because just taking it out of the binding and creating custom housing for it, which is the main purpose of this grant, is not going to be enough if we don't address the potential for further deterioration in the future. So that's the first part of the grant. I do actually have an extremely exciting announcement, which can I make?
Yeah, please do.
Which is that we have heard that the Met has agreed, their scientific research partnerships, they're sitting there, have agreed to do the analysis for this project, which means that we will be able to answer a list of questions that can be answered by scientific analysis. We're going to look to see if we can answer, I can't remember what my next slide is. Is it?
Well,
let's look at it.
Find out. Okay, great. Actually, perfect. Next slide. So one of the big questions we have is the bottom book on the left is not ours. It's the one from the Morgan. But the pages have been colored in the same way. All the other books of ours you saw in that graphic, the 5 have been, as James said, they're iron gall ink. But ours and the Morgans are colored with carbon-based pigments. We don't know how these were applied. We don't know what the binder is, which is the thing that makes it stick to the page. But we do know they've been treated in the same way. And because ours is the earliest and theirs is the second oldest, the second youngest, I should say, the second youngest from 1480, the gap is very curious to me. How would this a very much more time-intensive, labor-intensive treatment to the pages, because you're not just dipping a piece of parchment into a vat of iron gall ink or painting it on. You're having to apply it in many layers to get that very matte, shiny black that you get here. So that's one of the questions we hope to answer. We also, you see that really weird-looking picture that looks like someone scratched the parchment with different colors of ink. There are 2 completely plain pieces of parchment in our book with those splashes on it. And those colors happen to be the same colors as the colors in the Morgan. So now we're wondering whether there is more of a connection other than just the treatment of the parchment. And that's another thing we're hoping that the Met will be able to answer for us. And then we've got this sort of strange whitish bloom. On the bottom right image here, we'd like to know what that is, because if that's a form of deterioration that we need to address with certain environmental conditions, we'd like to be able to look at that there. And we also want to know what so the silver lettering, which seems white in the images, whether, and I don't know whether we can do this yet with the science. I don't know whether, because there's so little silver there, but I'd like to be able to see whether we can measure the oxidation of the silver so that we can tell how exhibiting it will affect deterioration over time. So these are all important questions really for the Hispanic Society, but actually for the field at large. And it is a great story that these people tell. Now, just before I go on, I just again want to thank SRP. SRP is a group at the Met. The Scientific Research Partnerships is a groundbreaking donor-funded program that allows the Met to support partner institutions in conservation and curatorial projects by offering free access. So they really are part of the philanthropy and collaborations that we all talk about. Free access to its cutting-edge scientific resources and expertise. And this initiative has grown significantly in recent years, expanding to museums and cultural organizations across the country. So we're really very fortunate because the Met also did the analysis of the Morgan's book. So we will be able to compare apples and apples, if you like, because not all scientific analysis is the same, and not all scientists are the same either. And the Met has the most extraordinary roster of conservation scientists. So I've talked enough.
Well, there are a couple of questions that come to mind, and the value of digitization. And we actually have spoken before, and there was something that came up, which was that this book, while it's well known, hasn't been very completely studied in its content, like the actual content inside. And so, can one of you speak to how digitization helps with that?
No, I can take that. I think among the many things that Monica generously shared with us, one is that conservation is a very extensive notion. And while some may think that digitizing is only, which is already a great thing, to grant access and to increase diffusion, it is also to prevent unnecessary manipulation of the object, therefore to conserve the book in the future. So that's one thing. Technical analysis, lab analysis also help us to understand better the effects of the environment on the book. So again, although it doesn't necessarily feel like directly or hardcore conservation, it definitely is like part of what conservation is about. So digitizing, we are launching a few ambitious operation about digitizing. We are benefiting from the support, and I want to acknowledge them and thank them, of Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Bodman Foundation, to make more of our library, available online, and also to, as we said, limit the number of manipulations of the books for when we really need to have to do that. So I don't know, James, if you want to add to that.
It's a funny thing that when used as directed, by using the book, you'll actually be helping to destroy it. It's exposed to light. It's exposed to your fingers. And so I think digitization does the obvious thing, which a high-res digital image lets us preserve the artifact and open it up to study. But digitization does something even, I think, equally as important, which is right now, if you want to study our objects, you have to come and see us on 156th Street, which I highly recommend that you do. But the purpose of the museum is to share the knowledge of a culture and evangelize that culture. And the more that we can digitize our library and our artifacts, the more people have access to it across the country and across the world. And so that's the ultimate goal, is to take the library and in some sense bring the library to you rather than make you come to the library. I know that we're not the only institution that's embarked on this path. I'm very familiar with the American Antiquarian Society in Massachusetts, who's embarked on a big effort to digitize earlier American artifacts. And I think it's an important part of the philanthropy for the museum in terms of educating people on what it is we do and why what we do is important, but also in conservation.
And development, because the more we make the collection available online, the more it's visible, the more we can raise awareness about it, and the more we can actually attract philanthropy to help us support and conserve those books.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the conservation? Well, a little bit about the process. I mean, the disbinding. I mean, will it go back into another binding? Is one of the questions I had.
No, is the short answer. We have, over the years since we first started talking about this in 2017, the original plan was to put it into another binding. But the current conservation ideas evolving books like this is that they stay in their quires. And a quire is the gathering of parchment folios. So we will probably find some way, and of course a lot of it will depend on what we find when we do disbind it. And that's a big, when we've been talking about, as I was preparing for this for today, I keep thinking, well, I don't actually know what the conservation treatment is going to look like until in 3 weeks when we take it down to Philadelphia to the conservators that are going to do the work. And until we take it apart, we won't know what we're going to find. But in a perfect world, we'll be able to keep the quires together, create a housing that will keep them safely together in a way that they could be handled without actually being touched. That's the gold standard right now, and would be my best. And then and allow us then to exhibit other pages that nobody has ever seen because they're in the middle of the book and we couldn't possibly strap the book to a mount in that way. So I'm hoping that we will be able to see much more of it. And for people who want to learn more about Marie of Castile, say, or the production of these sorts of books of ours, I'm hoping that they will be able to, because they will be able to access the high-res digital imagery online, they will be able to tell us more about the book. It tells us so much about history, about how things were valued, about trade, about technology in the 15th century. I mean, there's a long list of things that come out of projects like this that are not necessarily obvious, and it's all, it is fascinating. And
I had the magical experience of going to our library on a private tour, and they brought out the first edition of Don Quixote from 1605, and there's something really magical about being right up close to the text and seeing it seeing it there. I got to see from our collection one of the first books printed in Puerto Rico, so there really are treasures in the Hispanic Society Library. I think the Grolier exhibition was aptly named, and those treasures need to be preserved, and that preservation needs to come from first and foremost individual support. I think as a community, we're trying to grow our community to raise money to help preserve the items in the library and put them to work. And we want to digitize them. We want them used in education. We want them studied. But then we also want to explain why that is important to foundations. Because in some sense, we're trying to preserve artifacts that are well known in specialist circles, but might not be well known in generalist circles. So it's important that we come up with the right message to explain why this is important in a global context and get institutional support to the library.
So it seems like there's a combination of kind of broader reach with the digitization and drawing people in, but also you have your beautiful library, the physical books. We never want to lose connection to the original objects. So how do you draw people in? And is there a different sort of philanthropic approach to people who are interested in seeing like the original book versus people who maybe are interested in the images, the digitization?
Well, there is more than one answer. One, every time we have an exhibition, we try to include material from the library to give it visibility and raise awareness about the treasures that we have. Two, as we just discussed, we are increasing our efforts to digitize the material and have it online. And on the new version of the website that we are about to launch, there will be a section about online exhibitions. So that's a good way to show what cannot be shown, what cannot be on permanent display. And the last aspect, of course, is that we have special groups, visitors, and special events for and about the library. And we've benefited and from the support of the Pine Tree Foundation for quite a while, including for this exhibition. The Private Art Dealer Association is helping us. We grow our base of supporters to the library, and James, Blanco, and Sylvia Tannenbaum will be launching a group of amigos of the library. I think that's on the screen. Perfect.
Yeah.
And just to again, grow awareness, support, and share passion. I don't know, James, if you want to add to these initiatives.
I think you're right. I think there's a number of different reasons why people would support the library, and you have to tailor your messaging accordingly. I think there are people who would support the mission of the Hispanic Society overall and would donate to us because we ask them to, because they care about the art and culture of Hispanic America. I think there are people who, if we do project-specific fundraising, want to support a specific project like the restoration of the Black Book of Hours, so they can see what their money goes to, and they prefer something that's tangible. I think the challenge for us is to how do we get the not every object that needs to be conserved is well known as a Black Book of Hours. So how do you have the more famous objects in the collection help subsidize the less famous objects, but who are equally worthy of conservation? And so I do like the idea of picking out certain objects in the collection and raising money around them. But as we've talked inside, we want supporters to be a little more flexible with their dollars to support not only one project, but give us flexibility to support others. And I do think that all philanthropy really has to start with education. I think that there's so many good causes that people can support. You have to kind of make the case for why this cause is worthy. And I think it is, yes, we're looking to preserve a physical artifact, but what we're really doing, we're enabling the study of the physical object for future generations. And so it's important that educational mission of what we do comes across and people buy into it.
Right, and kind of, if I might add, especially in this moment where, all the museums have had NEH and IMLS funded projects cut with no warning almost. The donations and philanthropy from foundations and private institutions is becoming absolutely essential, because the valuable work that gets done behind the scenes in every single museum any of you have ever walked into is largely funded by a mixture of these two in the States, and we've just lost, one huge pot of money that we could apply to. So it becomes all the more important.
We take PayPal checks, and we also take talons of silver if you have any.
And crypto. Very often.
Well, we'll figure it out on our end.
Well, I think that's a really good place to stop. And I want to thank you all for your great insights and information that you gave us today. And I invite you all to go across and see the book itself, because we have to remain connected to these objects directly. But before we do that, we would like to open up to all of you for questions, and we are happy to take those.
I don't know which of the three of you can best answer this, and I imagine a lot of it is speculative. But regarding the philosophy or fashion about Black books of our Black books in general, what do you know about that period and why it ended, if it did end, or why only certain survive, etc.?
Well, Black books survive to this day. Well, books of ours survive to this day. Why there are only, I suspect that you're going to tell me that the reason why there is only 7 surviving Black books of ours is because they're chemically more volatile.
Well, I think that's part of it. I also think that the other thing is that they were extremely expensive to produce, because as opposed to regular books of hours, and I asked John yesterday how many the Hispanic Society have, and apparently Huntington wasn't keen on books of hours, all that keen on books of hours, but we have at least a dozen. I know the Morgan, and Frank perhaps might tell me, the Morgan has a significant collection of books of hours of various descriptions, including their black book. So I think part of it is the chemical thing of the iron gall ink, as we discussed, also because they were expensive. And then I don't know. I mean, they were mourning. I mean, we assume that the reason that the colored pages were colored black was because they were done for mourning purposes. I'm not sure that's true of all the ones that still exist. And then we have the Bastance, which is the book at the end, the one from 1495.
I have a banker's question. If Maria of Castile passed away in 1458, do you think the printer got paid?
You know, that's a great banker's question, and I don't know. And I wondered, actually, as I was looking at the images, conservation images I had of it, whether how long, what kind of a gap there was between the workshop, her dying, and the workshop finding out.
Right.
Because that, we know she died in 1458. We know that it wasn't in her inventory of books, because there was an inventory done in September of 1458, and it wasn't in there. But I don't know how quickly information like that traveled. There was
Perhaps they try to hold on the news, so they
so
they
it would go on, and then I really don't think that. As we were leafing through it, trying to find an alternate openings for the show, there are pages that look like they were made yesterday.
Well, hopefully we'll find out all those answers and make a great show with the Morgan Library and others.
Yeah,
so
the
exciting.
potential, the conservation is going to unlock so much information, and it'll be thrilling to see what comes out of it. Any other questions?
Hi there. Could you possibly read what it says on one of the images? Like the book, the first image?
Oops, I think I'll go this way.
Yes. Can you read it?
Anyone here can read it?
I cannot.
I can't.
But on the left is the calendar.
On the left is the calendar, and this is the incipient. But again, that's another good point, is that the last person who did any research in this book was in the 50s. She was the curator of... she was in the library, I can't remember her official title, Frances Spalding, and she did some work on it, which was never published.
It's about the Virgin Mary,
Incipient
something.
This is a standard
Beate
beginning.
Maria, Secundum.
The standard beginning of a book of hours, and it says that it's for the Roman third line, for the Roman. I can't remember how you say it. For the Roman use.
Fashion.
For Roman use.
Yes.
It would have had.
But nobody's actually gone through it to find out whether there was anything that would indicate, I don't know, specific towns. We just know that Vincent Ferrer was canonized in 1455. He's in the calendar, so therefore it can't be before that. And she died in 1458, so it obviously can't be after.
But it's likely that the text is very common. The book of hours at
It should have had feast days. It should have had gospel segments. It should have had 7 penitential psalms. These are very common. It should definitely have prayers to the Virgin Mary. And so and again, it was customized. So depending upon who commissioned it, you would choose the parts of Scripture that you liked. But there were common elements to all of these books.
I think we have one more question. Oh, okay.
I had one. This isn't a specific question to this book per se, but maybe a more general one. Typically, what goes into a production of a book like this? You mentioned a workshop. So is it like, what is the size of the workforce that goes in to create a book like this, and also to predict a time frame that it takes to complete a book like this?
That's
Big question.
Big question. So it's surely
30 seconds.
more than one individual. You know, it was the master of the workshop for sure, but you had the one or the ones who created the pigments, the one who provided the paper or the pergament or the vellum, the ones who did the binding, the ones who did the gilding. So it was really like a kind of a factory.
Specialized labor.
Any time of the time, you know, depending when they got the news about the passing of Maria de Castile, they might have been able to do what's left of it or what's conserved of it in 4 to 5 months, something like that. So that's a very interesting indication for us to understand the rhythm of production.
Gutenberg's movable type printing press, you know, was in the 1450s, so it's contemporaneous with this. But this would have been a handmade, you know, a handmade artifact, and so this is in the monastic, this is in the medieval monastic tradition of, you know, of doing the manuscript by hand. So it's really it's an artisan work. You know.
Yeah, completely customized.
Completely customized.
But it would have had illuminations. It would have had colorful illustrations in it that were never completed because of the death of the commissioner.
So the miniatures, the illuminated miniatures, are not in this. And I think when Frances Spalding, who looked at it really very carefully in the 50s, did say she thought she saw several scribes, people who actually did the writing, the hands of several people in the various borders. This is, and I have to say, there are lots of questions about even just the borders, because for something that came out of Bruges, it has very few flowers. I don't know if anybody here knows anything about the Bruges production, but the key to it is the flowers, which were so lifelike that they looked like a field of daisies or whatever it happened to be. And ours has very few, which leads us to believe that she was very specific about what she wanted, because they would have they would get those instructions. You know, she wanted something very specific.
Or perhaps it's because it's unfinished. You know, the great thing about this one, really, it is unfinished. So if you compare it to the one that is at the Morgan, which is fully finished, you really can understand the different, phases of the production, of the making of such a book. I mean, you just imagine the way we are building cars today. You know, like they move from one station to the other, and everyone is adding something to it until it is finished. So I kind of imagine that the way they were working on those books were the same. The one who did the writing was not necessarily the same one who did the illumination, and there was likely more than one person doing either. So that's fascinating.
Well, it's clearly, to use a phrase from our previous conversation, a treasure yet uncovered. I mean, we know so much about it, and yet there's just as much as we know, there's more, that same amount or more. And we'll unlock all of those mysteries in the days to come. And thanks to TAFAF Restoration Fund. Thank you to all.